Hello and welcome to the final pre-election forecast video for the 2024 presidential election in the United States. My name is John Toffelmeyer, and it looks like it's going to come down to four states that are going to decide this election: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. And I'm going to spend a lot of the video focusing on those four states. Briefly talk about Nevada and Arizona, which I think are in the bag for Trump. I'm not mentioning Georgia. I'll be discussing that later. It's a little bit more complicated. I'll be discussing that later. Now, I usually show you the map. I'm going to wait until the end because that's going to be what I think is one possible scenario for this election. A very cliffhanger scenario that I'm going to give you at the end of this video. So hang on, stay on for that. But let's get on with the latest poll, and we're going to take a look at the latest polls at the national level, and the the polls that I think are the most accurate, they're most likely to be the accurate, are these two polls here. So this right here, the TIPP, which moved back to a tie. Trump has a very slight lead, about half a point. Atlas Intel, roughly a point. The TIPP, I think that's the most accurate poll. It was very accurate in 2020, and I think it's going to be. It just has the feel like they're pretty much on. The poll that I think is the least of that came out is this NPR PBS Marist poll, Harris +4. I've looked at the assumptions there. The assumptions there are very favorable for Democrats. So they've made it very aggressive in terms of Democratic turnout, black turnout, Democratic turnout overall. Whereas Atlas Intel probably has the Republicans a little bit slightly for the Republicans, and maybe that's a little bit on that side, which is why I think this TIPP and right 50-50 looks like the most likely uh, vote that we have in this election. So let's now look at the swing states, and we're going to start with Wisconsin. And this is what I think is this is it's a very rough estimation based on some figures that come out of the NBC News website. Just a very rough estimation, but at least it's able to give me some of the magnitude of the votes that are out there, and a rough estimation of what the vote might be coming, the vote that's going to be banked for Kamala Harris on election night. And it looks like it's about 190,000 vote margin that Kamala Harris is going to be banking from early voting. Now, an important thing to note here is that Wisconsin cannot begin to process the early voting ballots until from the beginning of the day on election day. So they can't begin processing it. So and processing mail-in ballots takes a lot longer than ordinary ballots. So you've got to check everything. So this vote might be delayed. And so the thing to consider is that as the Wisconsin vote comes in, that this probably 190,000 votes that's probably going to come in later. We're probably going to need to see Donald Trump taking an early lead in Wisconsin that's going to be large enough to overcome this early vote for Kamala Harris. Now, I mentioned yesterday about the weather, and yesterday it looked like there was going to be a fairly steady rain throughout the day. That looks different now. There is going to be spotty rain, and I don't think it's going to have an impact on turnout. So that's good for turnout overall, and probably for the Republicans. There's weather is not going to be a factor in Wisconsin, but this early vote's going to come in slow because by state law they can't begin processing this vote until the day of today. Now, turning to Michigan, Michigan, we've new numbers. These are the latest updated numbers. Roughly 3 million votes have been cast in Michigan so far. It's a lot more than in Wisconsin, a bigger percentage of the total. And every indication that I have is that it's it's 50-50. It's very rough. I got this from from numbers that came from this NBC News site for early voting site. I think these are very rough, but at least it gives the sense that we're just about 50-50. So what that means is that probably at this mail-in vote, it's not going to have as it trickles in, it's not going to have an impact on the overall count. We're not really going to see any impact of that vote as it comes in. So the question of weather, I mentioned yesterday, there's going to be some rain early on the western side of the lower peninsula. Grand Rapids on the west is going to get some rain early on, but as you move east, it looks like there's going to be good weather throughout the day. But where the weather might have an impact is in the upper peninsula. If you know Michigan, it's got a lower and upper peninsula, roughly like that. The upper peninsula is going to get rain. It's going to be raining much of the day and chilly. It's very chilly, but it's the upper peninsula. It's November. It's cold up there anyway. So it might not have an impact on those people. But I do mention that it is going to be raining up in northern Michigan. That's Trump country. So the question is that going to affect turnout? The other question is, what's going to be the vote in Detroit? Got good weather, but the black turnout, there's a question about black turnout. So we'll have to be watching that very, very closely, whether black turnout is going to be affected. Is there a lack of interest? And I'm going to show you some numbers later that suggesting there might be a little bit of a lower interest in the black community. So that's what we're going to be watching. Is really is the turnout, especially from Wayne County. That's Detroit, Wayne County as it comes in. And also, there's going to be more black vote for Donald Trump in Wayne County. And also, there's a lot of Arab Americans there as well. And there's a lot of vote, that's a fair percentage of vote there. It's going to be for for Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. That's the kind of Wayne County is going to be very, very interesting. We're going to have to be watching that to see what impact that has. So moving on from Michigan, we'll move to Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, I'm happy to say weather is not going to be a factor. It sounds like it's going to be a beautiful day throughout the state, from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. Beautiful day in Pennsylvania. Now, this is the latest vote. It's about a 330,000 vote margin in Pennsylvania. And the important thing to remember here is that the early vote is way down. There's been a big decline, and I'm going to show you where that decline is taking place, because that's really interesting where that's happening. But we're seeing a big decline in early vote turnout, and the question is why? And the answer is, I've looked at the numbers, and it's really not clear. There's a couple of things that could be explained. It's not like you look at the number and say, oh yeah, I can see what's going on there. That's not clear. And so let's take a look to see how much the early vote has changed between 2020 and 2024. And you can see it's a huge decline in Democratic turnout. Over 700 at the latest votes, we're almost election day. It's a 700,000 vote decline in turnout, over 40% decline in Democratic turnout. Whereas in Republican turnout, just a little bit lower, only 36,000 votes less, and it's only about 6%. And in fact, by the time that all the ballots come in, there may actually be an increase in Republican votes. So this is a very interesting dynamic. Republicans are much more enthusiastic about early voting by mail, and Democratic turnout, mail vote turnout, has declined dramatically. And then the question is it a lack of interest? Is it flagging interest, or is it something else? And we'll take a look at that. And also there's one of the effects of this. Now, I don't know if you may recall, 4 years ago in Pennsylvania, there was a big Trump lead, but there was a huge mail-in vote. And so when the mail-in vote was almost all Democratic, it was like 80% Democrat. So that huge Trump lead evaporated the next day. And that the optics weren't very good for people who supported Donald Trump. That's going to be less of a factor this time. I don't think it's going to be a factor. But the important thing to remember here, you can't process the votes in Pennsylvania, just like in Wisconsin, until the day of. And at least the good news is there's a lot less early voting, so it's going to be less of an impact on the counting of the votes there. So now what we want to do is look at the change by locations across the state, and at least try to get a sense of whether that decline is something that is going to is something to really consider. And we've been looking at Pittsburgh, what I call the Philly collar. That's the Philly collar counties. There's 4 counties to the west that form a collar around the city of Philadelphia, and this is about even with the state. This 32.8, that's about the statewide average. The decline in Pittsburgh, this is Allegheny County, a little bit higher, but not extreme. But Philadelphia, big decline. Now, I might add, I vote in Philadelphia. I vote by mail in Philadelphia, so my vote is in there, but there's it's over 50% decline. It's going to come out somewhere around 50% decline in early voting in the city. And the question is it because of a lack of interest, or is it just because it's kind of easy to vote in person in the city? You just walk to your polling station. It's just around the corner. Most people in Philadelphia, it's just around the corner where they vote. That's a big question, and we will really be watching closely, because the Democrats are going to need a big Philly turnout, big turnout from Philadelphia, and there's probably more black vote for Trump this time, so they're going to need an even bigger turnout than normal. The rest of the state, this is down 23%. It's less. This is more Republican. We're looking at more Republican areas. So interesting dynamic. There's much less early voting. We're going to be watching Philadelphia very closely. Now the Philly collar counties, these are the suburban counties. They might have an increase. They're shifting towards the Democrats. That might offset the decline in the city. We'll see. That it's going to be intense, and I think it's going to be close. So this is a state we're going to be watching all night long. The ballots from mail-in are going to come in late. It might not be till tomorrow that is determined. North Carolina, a lot of early vote, tons of early vote, and it's over 4 million. It's about going on over 4.4 million votes. Now, what's fascinating here, whereas Pennsylvania's had a big decline in early votes, North Carolina's had a huge increase compared to 4 years ago. I don't get it. And I was going to make a chart, but there was almost no early votes compared to now. It's like everybody just in North Carolina decided, yeah, let's all vote early. That's an interesting I don't, if anybody has any, I don't understand the dynamic, but what it does mean is that most of the vote is going to be cast before election day. So it's just how soon, we're probably not going to get the vote as early as we have had in the past. As I said, Trump, very, very rough, very slight lead, 40,000 votes. It's probably not going to mean very much. We're going to be watching the day of. This is going to be very, very tight. I think that's all we can say now. So those are the 4 states that you're going to want to be just watching absolutely, absolutely, because I think that's where the election is going to be decided. I haven't mentioned Georgia, but I was able to make it just a really rough. And as I say, this is a very fuzzy estimation of what the early vote might be. A lot of early vote. It's over 4 million. It's over 4 million so far. And what's interesting here is that the amount of early vote now is about the same as as the total early vote in 2020. So we're actually going to have an increase in early voting in this state. Dramatic increase in North Carolina, a slight increase in Georgia. And where Georgia, we don't know by party. They don't tell us party affiliation, but they do tell ethnic makeup, and it tells an interesting story. And the story is this is the comparison between 20 and 2024 by ethnic group. And what we want to look here, and here. And that's black vote and what's called this other mixed race. And I think there's a lot of African American vote there as well. And you could see that it's roughly 100,000 decline, whereas all the other ethnic groups are seeing an increase. White vote about 55,000, increase in Hispanic vote, increase in Asian vote. So you're seeing these are increases in early vote, but a big decline. It looks like a significant decline in black vote. Percentage not huge. It's not huge, but remember, the thing to remember here is that Joe Biden carried Georgia by 12,000 votes, and we're looking at 100,000 fewer votes in the black community, where overall it's about the same as 4 years ago in the early vote. That could be telling us that black participation is going to be lower. That could be telling. Now we also know the increase in support for Donald Trump. It could have a big impact. We're going to watch. So I think Georgia is going to be less in play than the other swing states. Just real quick, I'm going to go to Nebraska second, and I'm going to tell you just a little bit why I think we might want to pay close attention. Kamala Harris continues to have a lead. It's about a 6.5, 6.6 percentage point lead. I think she's going to carry it, but it might be close. But I think she's going to carry it. But we're going to be watching this carefully. I don't, just real briefly, I think Nevada, this continues to come in. It's not looking good for the Democrats there in both Nevada and Arizona. Same picture. Pretty solid 5-6 percentage point lead. I think I think these are going to be comfortable enough for Trump, these 2 states. Just briefly about Florida, it's just massive. It's now over 8 million, 8.2 million, massive lead for Donald Trump in Florida. I've mentioned about the dynamic there. I won't go any further. Now let's turn to the map. This is what I think is a scenario for the election, and you'll see I'm now calling. I now have Kamala Harris with a very slight lead in Wisconsin and Michigan. And that gives her those 25 electoral votes. It's 226 plus 25 is 251. And I hadn't considered this before, but this brings up a very interesting scenario, because actually, if she carries these two states, and I mentioned North Carolina, but actually it has 16 electoral college votes. Pennsylvania has 19. 251 plus 19 is 270. Exactly 270. Exactly 270. And that's exactly what's needed. Which we get back to this Nebraska a second. The Nebraska second there, that's one electoral college vote. That if that went for Trump and she carries Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and I think Pennsylvania is going to be tight, and he carries the Nebraska second, it's actually a tie in the electoral college. I hadn't even thought about that, but that's very much a possibility. So really, in a way, this is this is an optimistic scenario for Kamala Harris, but very possible. I think it's very possible. The other and here I have Nevada, Arizona. I have them. You can see I have them basically in the likely. I don't even think they're I don't even call them swing states. I think that they're likely no. So I think this election comes down to actually even these three states, and it could be incredibly close. Incredibly close. That's one scenario. The other scenario is if there's any undercounting of the Trump vote, then Trump can win a fairly large victory in the electoral college. That if it's 1-2 points, then these two states, Trump gets all of these swing states, and he also might get Minnesota. Maine could be in play. New Hampshire could be in play. Virginia. This would be extreme. Under that scenario, Donald Trump wins a comfortable victory. I think either one is possible. I'd give it, maybe 60-40 that Donald Trump has a comfortable victory, but 40% it's an absolute cliffhanger, and we're going to be losing sleep. So that's what I think we're going in election day. We come all this way, and I think we're going to election. We don't know. It's now. It's nearing the opening. By the time I post this video, the polls are going to be just about ready to open on the East Coast of the U.S. So I'm going to probably by the end of the day, I might be posting just some short videos talking about some of as the night goes on. So come back and check. I'll very likely be posting some short videos telling you what's going on, what I think is going on in the election. So check back on that. But thank you for watching, and please like and please share this video. So I really appreciate you staying and watching this. Thank you, and I'll have some more to come during on election evening. Thanks. Bye.